Welcome to Real Vision Crypto. I'm Ash Bennington. Very excited to have with us today Sebastien Borget, co-founder and COO of the Sandbox, to talk about crypto, blockchain, gaming, NFTs, and the Metaverse. Sebastien, welcome to Real Vision Crypto.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, Ash.
And it's a pleasure to have you. Let's talk a little bit about your background, how you got into this space before the Sandbox.
So I'm 37 years old. I've been an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur for close to 14 years. And together with my business partner, Archer Madrid, we co-founded 3 companies. We had 2 exits, always in technology. We spent the last 10 years into mobile gaming, co-founded in 2011 mobile game studio with this idea of turning players into creators. One of the success from that mobile game studio was actually the original, the Sandbox game. It started as an iOS and Android game in 2011. And the promise of that game was to just enable anyone to create 2D pixel world by the touch of their finger on their smartphone screen. It turned out into a huge success rapidly, more than 40 million installs, 70 million player-made creations. And so content made by user-generated content was actually contributing to that success. And yet we also had a little bit of like restriction in place. Like we were not able to reward all the creators, all the users, now creators, for the content they made. So even though that game was very successful on mobile and turned out good amount of revenue, we were frustrated as founders that we couldn't give back to the creator and the community part of the value they brought to the game. At the end of 2017, we were already exploring with new technology, this time into blockchain and Bitcoin. And we found the first game that used NFTs. It was CryptoKitties. We tried out. We said, wow, there's a game that uses blockchain. What is it about? We saw it's a game about virtual cats on the blockchain that you can breed, you can trade, and not only trade on the game marketplace, but to an external marketplace. And as such, you could sell and monetize. And that was kind of like the revelation moment for us. Like, what if we apply that same technology and just allow anyone to make their NFTs? Then maybe we could solve that issue we had of like retaining creators and allowing them to own and monetize the content they made. And that was literally the birth of a new version of Sandbox, this time 3D, multiplayer, multi-platform. We've been working on it for a little bit over 3 years, 3 years and a half now, turning it from a simple game into a platform with a 3D editor, a marketplace, a map, a game maker that is no code, and a play side, which we recently launched in alpha last month, to showcase the possibility and to empower creators to own the 3D asset and experience they make, and finally be able to monetize them through the use of NFTs and blockchain.
You know, as I introduced you here today, Sebastien, I feel like I went through some of the most sort of important and exciting topics that are happening in the space right now. Blockchain gaming, NFTs, Metaverse, the Sandbox is at the fusion of all of those points. For people who aren't gamers themselves, give us an understanding, some background on what's happening in this ecosystem right now.
So we've been one of the pioneers into blockchain gaming. Blockchain gaming, it's a term that encompasses any kind of game that use blockchain technology in a way or another. It could be through like full decentralization of everything, gameplay, game rules, asset, etc. But can also be just part of the game that actually being put on the blockchain. Usually the NFTs, which are like game items or other component of the game that are now put on the blockchain, and as such can be owned by the users, can be exchanged with each other, can be sold on marketplace, can be monetized in new ways. We're at the intersection of blockchain gaming and the metaverse in a sense that offering this 3D virtual world where users can participate into thousands of different experiences through an avatar that's a 3D representation of themselves. And those experiences being more immersive, more social, more rich, more like culturally diverse is really bringing Sandbox into like the true metaverse, combining the concept of like true ownership of your identity, of your digital asset, of your avatar with like gamified experience and virtual world.
So what is the true metaverse as you describe it? Where do you see that headed? And what's the promise in this metaverse technology? Many of our viewers will know Metaverse from Facebook changing its name recently from Facebook to Meta. Obviously, this is something that is incredibly important and something that's viewed, at least by Silicon Valley right now, as truly being the future. What's the essence of this technology?
So the concept of virtual world is not new. It's been existing for more than 20, 25 years. We've seen Second Life, we've seen Minecraft, we've seen World of Warcraft, Roblox, Fortnite now, and Meta, Facebook rebranding itself. So in my opinion, just rebranding yourself isn't going to change massively who you truly are. And being a virtual world without bringing something new, disruptive for users is not being the true metaverse. The true metaverse is the metaverse which puts user at the centers, avatars at the centers, and that enable users to be self-sovereign, meaning like they can take their avatars across different virtual worlds. They can carry their identity from one to another. They can carry their digital assets, game item, wearables, and more from one to another, as well as their money in the form of cryptocurrencies and other tokens from one to another, being able to exchange it in a permissionless manner and accessing different platforms, having access to many type of experience and representation for those assets. And that's what's really disruptive. And in my opinion, can only be what the metaverse has to offer, something new to offer to users.
Yeah, I mean, it really does sound like what it's about is this idea of the empowerment of users having the ability to control, to own, to be self-sovereign in these universes, and in many ways to decentralize those ecosystems away from game makers who were kind of the gods of those gaming universes, and to empower the community that participates in the game to have a greater role, a greater say, and greater governance.
Exactly. And I think it's essential to think like what kind of opportunities behind does that enable? Before, whether you were a user or creator, anything you bring, you create, or the value you actually provide by being present and engaging with other users, socializing with them, all of that is actually being captured only by the platform. There is no value that accrues toward the users. There is no reward for users for the time they spend and the content they bring or the activities they do, which in my sense is not a great way to build something more fair, something more equitable, and something that's going to last and be persistent. With Web3 and decentralization, the value no longer goes to the platform that hosts those virtual worlds or the services. The value goes to the creators and the user first in the form of tokens. And that's great in the sense that it's enabling behind a whole new digital economy where users are free to trade, free to define, and can be rewarded. Being rewarded is really an important way, an important form of triggering more engagement. Why do we keep doing the things we're doing in life? We can keep working, we can keep being active by our passion, being driven by our passion, but how long will we be doing that if there is not a form of financial incentive attached to it? I think that's really what was lacking in those closed economy versus establishing what we can compare, in a way, the open metaverse and open decentralized virtual world can be compared somehow to new digital nation, new digital states, where everyone is a citizen of it, can participate into the governance, can be rewarded for the value they bring, and ultimately can feel they are actively contributing toward building that better world.
It's really fascinating to me because as you describe it, these ideas, the philosophy, the ownership, the openness, the governance structure, these are ideas that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see immediately on screen. In other words, a true metaverse, as you describe it, versus a traditional game might look very similar, but what's happening philosophically under the hood, a very different structure.
That's right. But I think it's important to start building, having those key principles in mind and using those key principles towards like what's your goal, how you want to shape that world. If your key principles are like, we want to monetize as much as possible our users to convert maybe 3% of them into paying users, or we want to track everything they do so we can serve them more ads and be the best at like tracking our users online so we can better convert and on our ads platform. This is a very different goal than ultimately we want to build a world where we will progressively decentralize all the content, all the asset, all the ownership of the world. We as a platform will not even own the assets, the money, or the land of that makes that world. And ultimately, those are the users who will participate into that governance. And we want to encourage bringing more actors into this ecosystem, showing the positive impact it could make into people's life to become creators, to discover new skills, kind of skills that maybe are not actually valued into the physical world, that become essential into a digital world, and lead in a way that hopefully is going to be different and hence make people feel different, make people think differently about like what is the value of my time online, my digital time.
Yeah, I mean, these are some really abstract concepts that we're talking about, but are really large and important ideas. Reengineering, in some ways, the nature of a corporation that's really fundamentally been in the same form, the joint stock corporation, for some 300 or 400 years now, talking about, in some ways, even reengineering some of the traditional boundaries of the nation state, maybe at least at the surface level. Really big ideas.
You're right. And it's still very abstract. So there's one thing as well we shouldn't forget is like, why would users want to come here first? And well, for fun. I think like that should be the very first reason that why people would pick the metaverse like Sandbox to come, engage, be there, spend time with, and after they will get access to all those other benefits and other reasons. And that's why we provided the tool to enable anyone to create fun experiences. We worked to bring out brands, some of the best entertainment brands like Walking Dead, like celebrities like Snoop Dogg. There will be many more, or DJs, artists, etc. To create a place that will go beyond their imagination, where they can engage with others, they can socialize, they can create games, they can make games with their favorite IPs and brands, and actually even launch those games, monetize them on the platform. And from the fun, like users will come for the fun, will stay for the fun, and after will enjoy those long-term benefits.
Sebastien, you're so passionate in the way that you talk about this. And it's really evident, even just in the first few minutes of a conversation like this, how different this would be structured from a traditional company. A traditional COO would come on and they would start talking about what their company did. And they would talk about their products and their services and their relationship with their customers. But you really think about this in a very broad and philosophical way, which I just genuinely appreciate because it's such an interesting and I think engaging thing for people who did not grow up in this ecosystem to try and get their heads around just how significant these changes are.
Well, thanks. I'm really trying to be as close as possible to our community to try to brew this ecosystem, to make people like turn their dreams into like new careers opportunity, new jobs, try to make a positive impact and like develop around the Sandbox really a community that's bringing more and building this world together.
So talking of that community at the Sandbox, give us a sense of what some of the numbers are. Give us a sense of the scope of the activity, of the engagement, and the number of people who are participating right now in the Sandbox.
So we're proud to have more than 1.6 million registered users with a wallet. Half of them never had a wallet before, so we help them to bring into having this Web3 wallet and NFTs behind, etc.
So Sebastian, for people who are relatively new to this space, give us a sense of what wallet creation means and why it's so significant for participation in the community.
Well, the wallet is like the access to what you use to access all those decentralized applications, and you hold the private keys, the keys to your wallet. It stores the record of your ownership, of your identity, of your digital asset or your cryptocurrencies. So instead of trusting a third party, a company like Facebook, like Microsoft, like Google, to host all your data online, you actually are the only person who can access that data and host it yourself. So that's why a wallet is so important. It's the central piece in Web3. And I believe it's important to be one of the main drivers for people to learn what is a wallet, to get their wallet, and to use their wallet in a fun and engaging way. We are excited to have in our community millions of followers between Twitter, Discord, Telegram, and all those social channels, also actively engaging outside of the platform and on the platform. We've got more than 50 studios building, thousands of artists uploading content on the marketplace, 18,500 landowners. So what's interesting is Sandbox also is appealing to different kind of audiences, creator, artists, gamers, and also investors, people who can hold the token to be exposed to the metaverse in general without necessarily being a player or a creator themselves. And all of them are actively contributing, like in Digital Nation, to the development of that world.
I mean, with that level of engagement, with that scale, you've got significant scope going right now.
Yes, our roadmap is pretty busy. We are continuously building. So the platform is still into an alpha stage. We have provided the creation tools for a little bit more than a year now. And we have hundreds of people, like I mentioned, like launching their own builder studios, their own architect studios to create for the landowners, for the brands. We have we have launched last month the first alpha. So for the first time, Sandbox was accessible for players to engage into social activities, into dances, and earn tokens, NFTs, and send through participating into this play to earn season. That alpha is now closed for now. There will be a second alpha sometime in February, and then we'll be launching more and more toward this year until everything is open at any time, directly launched by landowners themselves. And that, I think, could be the moment we consider the Sandbox and is open and available to the public.
Yeah. So you mentioned land sales, land ownership a couple of times. This is a really interesting and I think confusing point for many people. I had a close friend of mine, a corporate lawyer, incredibly smart, send me a message just last night saying, I just don't get land sales. This doesn't make any sense to me. How can there be scarcity in a digital universe? It's something that people who are not gamers, people who are not part of this ecosystem, I think struggle to get their heads around. How do you describe it to them? As she said, how can people be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for virtual land? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, not all land are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So first of all, like those will be the most expensive. And well, the concept of virtual real estate, virtual land, I think is very similar to the concept of physical real estate. Like there are virtual worlds. Those virtual worlds have a limited space. Think of like a town like New York or Paris. Like they cannot expand. They have a certain size. And within those space, those finite number of digital parcels, you can publish experiences that become accessible to other users. By owning the land, you get access then to monetization on the platform. You can start selling your content. You can publish games that others will maybe pay to play. Or you can rent them to another creators who will publish and monetize them. Why is it valuable to build lands and to monetize land? I do think, like, as I mentioned before, a virtual world by itself is going to be like pretty much empty. All the content, 90, maybe 99% of the content will be made by users, the rest by professionals, brands, game studios. But the speed at which content is going to be built is incredible. It's incredible, and it goes beyond anything we've seen in the physical world. If you want to, like, first of all, you're not bound anymore by the laws of physics. You can do things that really transcend your imagination, both visually, aesthetically, and in terms of gameplay. You can build great experiences, great content, great architecture in a matter of hours, matter of days, versus in the real world, to do that, it's going to take you what? Years, maybe centuries for some of the most world landmarks, etc., wonders of the world. You have access to a global audience instantly. Like, discovery, accessibility has never been as fast as now. Like, if you build in New York, you only get people from New York. There's such a limited traffic and visibility to this experience you're creating. So all of those factors combine as well to the idea, like, there's a whole generation of people in the world, all the middle class, as you can read into newspaper, that cannot access physical real estate anymore. And they will never be able to access that, even if they work all their lifetime. And that's a fact. Like, my parents were able to buy their house in their 20s. Today,
Right.
you can do that maybe in your 40s at best, and so on.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, if you're into a more digitally native person, a Gen Z, etc., you understand the value of digital assets. You're spending more and more time between work, play, and all sorts of activities, educating, learning, etc. online. You want to have your house, you want to have your place, you want to build content, you want to monetize as well into a virtual world. And that's probably one of the reasons behind the success of virtual land. Also, it's typically a class of digital asset that can be used for gaming, but can be also applied into decentralized finance and finance. You have like Metaverse funds, which acquire many parcels and then offer to retail investor, just like investment plan, to get access to a certain yield without being themselves choosing location or creating, etc. They are realtors. They are specialized into buying land, developing virtual concept on top of it, and reselling them. That's what a company like Republic Realm, for example, is doing, selling out the Fantasy Island and other concepts. You can, I think in the future, going forward, you might be able to take a loan or mortgage your virtual land because it is valuable. People can produce a predictable revenue on the platform.
Right. I mean, you really do describe it in the traditional context of the economic view of what land is, in that it can create revenue, it can create cash flow, it can become a physical point of presence for example, a business. Give us a little bit of a sense of where we are right now versus where we're headed in the future. In other words, what are some of those revenue producing items today, and where are we going?
Right now, we're still in the very early days. There are various decentralized virtual worlds, including Sandbox, where you can acquire a parcel of land at a fixed price, reasonably low, and start building. The content creation tools are there. The platforms are working, the brands are coming, the experiences are being created. The audience will then progressively come, and if the fun is there, if all the key ingredients are there, they will stay. And at that moment, we can definitely see, like, we're preparing, think of it like urban planning, preparing the land into this new world, making sure it's going to be built. and then attracting progressively after the builders, the investors, the creators, and then the visitors. Except that visitors are not here just for spending as like going to a shopping mall or going to a theme park. They are actually actively participating by their presence, and they are being rewarded for being present, because if they complete quests, if they spend time, they can receive tokens. Those tokens have some form of value since they can be sold on a marketplace, for example. And that's, I think it's a whole new approach towards like designing a world. And that may be what will make this open metaverse work, whereas Second Life in the past didn't really break through.
Yeah. You mentioned this distinction between properties, the most expensive of which is now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, worth relative to properties in the digital universe and the metaverse that are worth far less. Give us a sense of what determines the value of those properties. I think you sort of already hinted at it in terms of the potential to generate revenue. But what are some of those characteristics that make for prime property, and why is that something that people are willing to pay for?
Something unique in Sandbox is really the idea that you can reinforce the ownership of your land by uploading your own logo. When you first look at Sandbox map, what you see is those different squares of different size with some very recognizable logos. Some of them like Atari, Snoop Dogg, Walking Dead, Binance, CoinMarketCap, brand from the physical world or like from the blockchain and Web3 ecosystem. People like to become the virtual neighbors of those brands. And by virtual neighbors, we mean like they are really literally walking distance with an avatar. So when you are into, let's say, Snoop Dogg land, you walk through the border, you really will get into the land from his neighbor. That's typically the land that sold for, I think it was $450,000 to become the virtual neighbor of Snoop Dogg mansion in the metaverse. So it does mean something in terms of traffic, in terms of discoverability, in terms of visibility and travel time to be close to certain brands. Now apply to the notion of community as well. You want to pick a location that you know will be like creative, exciting. So you want to be part in a place where there will be a great mix of like artists, sports, gaming, art. You know that will be this attractive neighborhood where you can meet interesting people who also share those common interests. So even if you're, and I like to think that that's what makes also neighborhood valuable. You can choose to be part of certain communities, of certain interests, or be closer to certain brands. That's a little bit what you're seeing as well in the model, in the urban planning development of new cities. All cities, they used to have like, oh, there's the center, there is a periphery, and downtown and outside and suburbs. And that's it. But in the metaverse, that's not the case. It's not like just the center and anything around is less valuable. No, every corner, we're trying to make it as valuable to certain communities to make them interesting and also make sure there will always be animation at any corner of the metaverse.
Yeah, in many ways, the metaphor of physical land really does work very well here. The idea being, for example, if you're opening an ice cream store, you can probably make more money selling ice cream next to the Apple store on Fifth Avenue where people just bought a $900 iPad. Hey, maybe they're willing to pay $12 for an ice cream cone. But if you build an ice cream store in the middle of a cornfield, there's not a lot of foot traffic. Nobody comes on a regular basis. So it is this sort of really intriguing metaphor for how this world might work. I do have to ask, though, there's always a question of things like when you have highly speculative assets, the potential for market manipulation. How do we know, for example, that people aren't trading things back and forth between wallets they control, kind of wash trading, building up the value of a piece of land and then attempting to sell it and say, look at this transaction history on chain. Obviously, there are people who are willing to pay for it. You should really come in and pay $500,000 for something that maybe, a month ago was worth a tenth of that or 1/100th of that.
So those are things you need to be very careful at. And I think blockchain enabled more transparency than any other technology to actually see that. There are already businesses and services that monitor transaction and would actually find out. The community will find out because the community is also really looking at understanding the value, the true value from the utility and not the speculative nature. So they would analyze the flow of transaction, the origin, the destination, and find those patterns. There are tools now that help, as I mentioned, almost working like the Zillow of virtual real estate, where you can find out who were the previous owner, how much land traded, how much time land have been exchanged, users, what's the average time between they are being exchanged among users, which are the most hotspots on the map. Why? Why is that? Because there is this community, this brand that entered, etc. To provide as much transparency on this data for potential buyers and people who are interested to make sure they are getting the land at the right price. I've seen some services going as far as like doing this analysis, calculating the average trade price over all the surrounding parcel to use statistical and heuristical functions to make sure like you don't overprice, you don't pay over premium. Now, sometimes the opportunity is also, well, it could be more of an impulsive purchase, like, like the opportunity to be next the neighbor of Snoop Dogg is probably a unique one. Like there's no other parcel around it that will offer that. And that might be less driven by data and more driven by just like, again, sometimes the views is what drives us to buy a house over another house in the physical world. So it's all that combination of factor. But what I like is like, it's far from being speculative only or manipulative only, in the sense like, it's not like just one or two transactions a day. There's 500, 1,000 transactions a day on the map. The data is there to back it up. There's been, I think, more than $380 million worth of GMV since lifetime over land. Land in Sandbox became one of the top collection on OpenSea, and many websites provide the data to understand why.
And is that GMV gross merchandise value?
Yes.
You said something that I thought was really intriguing, and you just mentioned it in passing, where you said maybe 90% of our content is generated by users. That's a pretty extraordinary idea and a pretty extraordinary number. This idea that people who are participating in the community, rather than, for example, brands, companies that have very deep pockets, could be building, developing, putting into productive use some of these virtual spaces. That's a really fascinating idea.
I think it will be, with 8 billion people in the world, there's definitely going to be more users contributing than actual companies, enterprise, and brand. And well, the fun comes from user-generated content. Like what makes TikTok fun right now is the capacity of people to be very creative, to be able to remix in such an easy and accessible way. And that's what we try to keep in mind. The first vision we had 10 years ago was, how do we turn anyone into a creator just by the touch of their finger? I like to think Sandbox now, even as this new Metaverse version, to keep that spirit, to inspire others and let them just create anything they like. It doesn't need to be professional. It needs to be fun first.
Sebastien, as you look to the future of the Sandbox, of this technology more generally over 1, 3, 5-year time horizons, what are you most excited about?
Well, I'm definitely excited about opening Sandbox so that any landowners can start publishing their own experiences, publishing their play to earn season, enabling holders of certain NFTs, digital assets, to access part of their experience and creating like even more communities of engagement, rewarding their fans. And so that's on our roadmap for this year, followed by pushing progressively the governance. Once the world is open, once there is this network effect that kicks in, once the economy is running at full speed with an open marketplace and the open experiences, it will make sense to start opening like renting on land and opening governance to the token holders who own land, who own avatar, or who own sand, to shape and prioritize what they want us as a platform to develop based on their actual needs, not just what we would decide is the next way. So we've taken Sandbox initially with much more hands-on approach, trying to set a certain cap, a certain direction on how we want to shape it. And we hope that we'll have inspired enough people, an ecosystem, builders, architects, players, and more towards what it could be, so that in a Web3 fully decentralized manner, we could fully be withdrawn from operating that platform, and then it can run on its own and run forever in a decentralized manner.
Sebastien, you've done a great job of explaining this vision, I think, to people who've struggled to get their heads around it. As we come to the conclusion of this conversation, key thoughts, final takeaways that you'd like to leave our viewers with.
Final takeaway. Well, if you got curious about what I said, if you felt like I'm interested, I want to learn, do it. Start learning. Like, we have a lot of documentation. We've launched boot camps. Over our Discord, the community is very friendly and can answer your question. There are daily streams on Twitch on how to use VoxEdit, how to use GameMaker. So we hope you'll like break through the ceiling and try out, and maybe there will be your next job in the metaverse. Maybe that will be the thing that you were looking for, that you'll get passion for, and you can earn revenue from now. And well, you won't hear your parents say anymore, like, stop playing, stop spending so much time on your computer. You're not going anywhere with that. That's not valuable. Let's break that image through and make sure like we can be perceived and valued for what we really contribute for, even into the digital space.
Sebastien, really fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Hey there, revolutionaries. Thanks for tuning in. For more content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto and get unfiltered access to the most brilliant minds in finance and crypto. Join our community of lifelong learners for exclusive access, unparalleled education, and unbiased insights.